Your parents are downstairs with bankruptcy lawyers begging for their daughter's signature." The words hit me like ice water. I stared at my assistant, Rebecca, standing in the doorway of my corner office at Chen Industries. Yes, Chen, I kept their name. The ultimate power move, some would say. I call it poetic justice. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city sprawling beneath me, 32 floors below, where apparently my biological parents waited in our marble lobby. The same parents who signed custody papers 23 years ago, making me a ward of the state because, and I quote from the Social Services Report, "pursuing entrepreneurial ventures incompatible with child-rearing responsibilities." Translation: their startup was more important than their 11-year-old daughter. "They've been here since 6 a.m., Rebecca continued, her voice gentle. She knew my history. Everyone in my inner circle did. "Security says they have documents, something about needing your signature to prevent foreclosure on Chen Tech." I almost laughed. Chen Tech, their revolutionary company that was supposed to change the world. The same company they chose over me. Now they needed their abandoned daughter's signature to save it. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I pulled up the security feed on my tablet. There they were. My mother, Victoria Chen, still clutching that Hermes bag she probably couldn't afford anymore, her face a masterpiece of Botox fighting against desperation. My father, Richard Chen, in his Italian suit that screamed old money even as his company bled new debt. They looked older, of course. 23 years does that. But they also looked diminished, like success had been slowly drained from them, leaving only the hollow shell of what they used to be. "Ms. Chen," Rebecca prompted gently, "should I have security escort them out?" I stood, smoothing down my dress, a simple but elegant piece from a sustainable designer, nothing flashy. Martha, my foster mom, taught me that true power doesn't need to announce itself. "No, send them to Conference Room A, the one with the Foster Youth Achievement Wall." Rebecca's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "The one with your Forbes cover?" "That's the one." As I walked toward the elevator, memories flooded back unbidden. That last morning when I was 11, eating Fruit Loops at our kitchen counter while my parents discussed logistics over coffee. They'd hired a driver to take me to the Department of Children and Family Services, too busy to drop off their own daughter. My mother had patted my head absently, told me it was just temporary, then went back to her laptop. My father hadn't even looked up from his phone. The elevator descended, and with each floor, I felt myself transforming, not into the abandoned child I'd buried her years ago, but into something else, something forged in foster homes and midnight tears and the fierce love of Martha and Jim Stewart, who showed me that parents are made by choice, not chance. Conference Room A was our showpiece, walls lined with success stories of former foster youth we'd hired, mentored, invested in. And yes, there it was, my Forbes 30 Under 30 cover. The headline, "The Billionaire Who Builds Futures for Forgotten Children." They were already seated when I entered, their eyes immediately finding mine. My mother gasped, actually gasped, like she was seeing a ghost. Maybe she was. The last time she'd seen me, I was a skinny 11-year-old with braces and dreams of becoming a pianist. Now I was 34, CEO of a company worth more than theirs ever was, even at its peak. "Lily?" My father stood, uncertain. His hand moved like he might hug me, then thought better of it. "Smart man." You look wonderful." I sat across from them, noting how their eyes kept darting to the foster youth wall, to my Forbes cover, to the view of the city that spoke of the kind of success they'd always craved. Let them look. Let them see what abandonment built. Richard, Victoria. I used their first names deliberately. They flinched. Good. "I understand you need something from me." My mother's hands trembled as she opened her Louis Vuitton briefcase, another relic from better days. "Lily, sweetheart." "Ms. Stuart Chen," I corrected coolly. "I go by my legal name now, the one my real parents gave me." Another flinch. My mother swallowed hard, then pushed a stack of documents across the table. Chen Tech is facing bankruptcy. The investors pulled out. The bank is foreclosing on everything. The company, our home, everything we've built. Everything they built, not everything we built. Because there was no we. There never had been. I flipped through the documents, my expression neutral even as my mind processed the numbers. They were worse off than my analysts had reported. This wasn't just bankruptcy. This was complete financial annihilation. "And you want what exactly?" My father leaned forward, desperation cracking his composed facade. "You're our daughter. Chen Industries is worth billions. A small investment, a loan, even just a guarantee to the bank." "I'm your daughter?" I let the words hang in the air like a blade. Was I your daughter when you signed custody papers? Was I your daughter when you stopped visiting after 3 months? Was I your daughter when you sent a card for my high school graduation with a $50 check and no return address? My mother was crying now, real tears cutting through her makeup. We made mistakes. We were young, ambitious. "You were parents," I said quietly, "until you decided not to be." The silence stretched between us. Years of abandonment condensed into moments. I stood, gathering my composure like armor. They looked up at me with hope so desperate it was almost painful to witness. "I'll have my lawyers review your situation," I said finally. "Rebecca will show you out." "Lily, please." My mother reached for me. I stepped back, my voice steady as granite. 23 years ago, you taught me a valuable lesson. In business, emotions are liabilities. I'm simply applying what I learned. As I walked toward the door, my father's broken voice followed me. "We're sorry, Lily. We're so sorry." I paused at the threshold, not turning around. "I know you are. Now." The echo of my heels on marble was the only sound as I left them sitting in that conference room, surrounded by the faces of foster youth who'd made something of themselves despite being thrown away. Just like me, the difference was I'd kept their name, not out of love, out of proof. Proof that Chen could mean something more than abandonment. Blood makes you related, loyalty makes you family, and desperation, I learned that morning, makes people remember they have children. The night they left me at Sunshine Group Home, I threw up 3 times. Not from sickness, from pure anxiety. The social worker, Mrs. Peterson, held my hair back in the communal bathroom, while somewhere down the hall a girl screamed in her sleep. "First night's always the hardest, sweetie," she'd said, like this was summer camp and not the place where unwanted children learn to stop expecting love. "I need you to understand something about being abandoned at 11. You're old enough to know it's not your fault, but young enough to believe it must be. So you create stories. Maybe if I'd gotten straight A's instead of A minuses. Maybe if I hadn't asked for piano lessons that cost too much. Maybe if I'd been quieter, smaller, less of a line item on their startup budget. The truth was simpler and crueler. I was a bad investment. That first week, I watched the news obsessively on the group home's ancient TV, waiting for my parents to realize their mistake. Instead, I saw them on TechCrunch announcing their Series A funding. $10 million. They were all smiles and promises about changing the future of data analytics. The interviewer asked about work-life balance. My mother laughed her tinkling laugh and said, "When you're building something revolutionary, sacrifices have to be made." I was the sacrifice. The other kids at Sunshine had stories that made sense. Junkie parents, abuse, neglect, poverty. But me? My parents drove a Tesla. We had a housekeeper. I had my own MacBook at age 10. The other kids didn't know what to do with me, this girl whose parents just opted out, like canceling a subscription they no longer needed. "Rich girl's crying again," Tanisha would announce whenever I'd have a breakdown. She'd been in the system since she was 3. By the time I arrived, she was 14 and harder than concrete. "Your parents ain't coming back, Chen. Might as well accept it." But I couldn't, not at first. I wrote them letters on the group home's donated stationery, careful cursive explaining how good I was being, how I understood they were busy, but maybe they could visit on Sunday, just for an hour. I even included my report card, all A's, see? I was worth keeping. The first letter came back marked "Return to Sender." The second, third, and fourth just disappeared into the void. By letter number 10, Mrs. Peterson gently suggested I stop. "Sometimes, honey, people make choices they can't unmake." 6 months in, they finally visited. I'd prepared for weeks, washed my hair with the good shampoo I'd been saving, wore my nicest outfit that still fit. They brought me a teddy bear, a fucking teddy bear. Like I was 5, not 11, and falling apart. "The company's doing well," my father said, checking his phone every 30 seconds. "We're about to close Series B." My mother kept looking around the visiting room like poverty might be contagious. "Are you eating enough? You look thin." I wanted to scream, "I'm thin because I can't eat," when my stomach is full of abandonment. Instead, I smiled and said I was fine. We talked about nothing for 45 minutes. They promised to visit again soon. They promised to bring me home once things stabilized. They never came back. I moved through 5 foster homes in 4 years. The Johnsons, who collected foster kids like stamps for the monthly checks. The Garcias, who were kind but overwhelmed with 6 kids and counting. The Mitchells, where the dad looked at me in ways that made me lock my door at night. The Carters, who sent me back because I was too difficult, code for asking why they spent my clothing allowance on their biological daughter. Each move meant a new school, new rules, new ways to be invisible. I learned to pack light, trust no one, and never get comfortable. I watched my parents rise through Google alerts I'd set up at the library. Series B, 50 million. Series C, 200 million. Magazine covers, conference keynotes. They were building an empire while I was building walls. The breaking point came when I was 15. Business Insider ran a profile on them titled "The Power Couple Revolutionizing Data." There was a photo spread of their new mansion in Atherton. 7 bedrooms, a pool house, a fucking meditation garden. The article mentioned they were child-free by choice, allowing them to focus fully on their vision. Child-free by choice. They hadn't just abandoned me, they'd erased me. I destroyed my side of the room that night, tore up every photo, every letter I'd never sent, every stupid hope I'd held on to. My roommate Maria, watched from her bed and said nothing. She'd been in the system since birth. She understood rage. The next morning, I was transferred to what would be my last foster home. Martha and Jim Stewart, a couple in their 50s who'd raised 4 biological kids and still had room in their hearts for broken teenagers. They were different from the start. "You can call us Martha and Jim," Martha said, helping me carry my garbage bag of possessions to a real bedroom. Not a shared room, my own space with a door that locked from the inside and windows that opened to a garden. "We're not trying to be your parents. We're just here to help you become who you're meant to be." They kept their word. No fake family dinners where everyone pretended we were the Brady Bunch. No pressure to call them mom and dad, just quiet, consistent care. Jim taught me to drive in their old Honda Civic. Martha showed me how to balance a checkbook, cook a real meal, apply for college scholarships. They came to my school plays, my academic decathlon competitions, my graduation. When I got into Stanford, Martha cried. "I knew you were special the moment I met you," she said, hugging me tight. "Not because of where you came from, because of where you were going." They mortgaged their house to help with what scholarships didn't cover. I tried to refuse. Jim shut me down with quiet firmness. "Family helps family, Lily, and that's what you are, family." The day I left for college, they gave me adoption papers. "Only if you want," Martha said quickly. "We just thought if you'd like to make it official." I signed them crying so hard I could barely see. Lily Stewart Chen, keeping the Chen to remind me where I came from, adding Stewart to honor where I was going. My biological parents never knew. They were too busy being child-free by choice to notice their daughter had been chosen by someone else, someone who saw a broken 15-year-old and decided she was worth fixing, worth loving, worth claiming. I learned to stop crying by 17, not because the pain stopped, but because I finally understood something Tanisha told me that first night at Sunshine. The best revenge against people who throw you away is becoming someone they can't afford to know. She was right, but she missed the best part, becoming someone you're proud to be, with or without them watching. "Before we begin, please silence your cell phones," Principal Morrison announced from the podium. I almost laughed. Mine had been vibrating nonstop for the past 10 minutes in my graduation gown pocket. 18 years old, valedictorian of Lincoln High, and about to give the speech I'd rewritten 17 times. Not because I was nervous, because I kept trying to craft words that would somehow reach the 2 empty seats in the 3rd row, the ones I'd foolishly saved with reserved signs. Martha squeezed my shoulder from behind. "You've got this, sweetheart." Jim gave me a thumbs up, video camera ready. They'd arrived an hour early to get good seats, wearing their best clothes and matching proud smiles. Behind them sat their biological kids who'd driven in from various colleges to watch their foster sister graduate. Real family, the kind that shows up. I stood, smoothing my gown, and walked to the podium. The sea of faces blurred together, parents, grandparents, siblings, all here to witness their children's milestone. The empty seats screamed louder than any cheering could. "Fellow graduates, families, teachers," I began, my voice steady, despite the phone still buzzing against my hip. "They say it takes a village to raise a child, but sometimes that village is just 2 people who choose to see potential where others saw problems." My speech was about resilience, about finding family in unexpected places, about building your future on the ashes of your past. Standard graduation fare wrapped around my own story, sanitized for public consumption. I talked about overcoming challenges without naming them, about gratitude without specifying who deserved none of it. Halfway through, my phone vibrated again and again and again. Because success isn't measured by where you start, I continued, trying to ignore the insistent buzzing, but by how far you're willing to go and who stands beside you on that journey. The crowd applauded at all the right moments. A few parents wiped tears. Mrs. Chen from my AP chemistry class, no relation, just cosmic irony, gave me an encouraging nod. I was killing it, as Jim would say, crushing my last high school performance. Then, in the middle of my closing paragraph about bright futures and unlimited possibilities, my phone rang. Actually rang. I'd forgotten to switch it to full silent, and my custom ringtone, the one I'd set specifically for unknown numbers in case it was ever them, echoed through the auditorium's sound system via my lapel mic. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Principal Morrison gestured for me to continue. I fumbled to silence it, accidentally opening my email in the process. And there it was, the subject line that changed everything. Stanford congratulations, internship opportunity at Chen Tech. My voice faltered mid-sentence. The words on my prepared speech blurred as I stared at the sender. Richard Chen, CEO. I'm sorry, I managed, looking up at the confused audience. Sometimes the universe has interesting timing. I locked my phone and shoved it back in my pocket, finding my place in the speech through muscle memory alone. But the words felt different now, hollow. Here I was, talking about resilience and chosen families, while the people who'd thrown me away were sliding into my inbox with job offers. And so, class of 2018, I leave you with this. Family isn't about DNA. Success isn't about approval. And your worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see it. Thank you. The applause was thunderous, standing ovation. Principal Morrison hugged me. Classmates high-fived me on the way back to my seat. But all I could think about was that email burning a hole in my pocket. I waited until we were at dinner, Martha and Jim's tradition at the fancy steakhouse reserved for special occasions, before I opened it. My foster siblings were debating whether my speech was better than Kevin's 3 years ago. It was, he admitted grudgingly, when I finally looked. Dear Lily, congratulations on your acceptance to Stanford and your valedictorian status. We've been following your achievements through Stanford's admitted student profiles. Very impressive. Chen Tech is launching a competitive internship program for exceptional Stanford students. Given your academic record and the coincidence of our shared surname, Small World, I wanted to personally extend an invitation to apply. This could be an excellent opportunity to gain experience in data analytics and possibly explore a future with the company. We're building something revolutionary here, and smart young minds like yours are exactly what we need. Best regards, Richard Chen, CEO, Chen Tech PS. Your mother sends her congratulations as well. The steak turned to sawdust in my mouth. Shared surname. Coincidence. Small world. Like I was some random Chen they'd stumbled across, not the daughter they'd deposited at DCFS 7 years ago. And that postscript, your mother sends her congratulations. The woman who hadn't sent so much as a birthday card since I was 12 suddenly remembered I existed because I was Stanford bound and potentially useful. What is it, honey? Martha noticed my expression first. She always did. I passed her my phone, watched her face cycle through confusion, recognition, and finally the protective fury that made me love her even more. Jim read over her shoulder, his jaw tightening with each word. "The audacity," Martha breathed, "the absolute audacity." "They don't even acknowledge who I am," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "It's like I'm just some random smart kid with their last name." Kevin leaned over to read. "Wait, they're seriously pretending they don't know you're their daughter?" "Oh, they know," Sarah, the youngest Stewart sibling, said, with wisdom beyond her 19 years. "They're just hoping you'll play along, make it less awkward for them." That night, after the celebration died down and the Stewart clan departed for their various homes, I sat in the backyard with Martha and Jim. The stars were hidden by light pollution, but I stared up anyway, trying to process the earthquake in my chest. "You don't have to respond," Jim said quietly. "You don't owe them anything." I know, and I did know. But something had crystallized in that moment at the podium, reading that email while wearing my valedictorian stole. They'd chosen their company over me, chosen to erase me from their success story, chosen to pretend I was a stranger when it suited them. Fine, I could play that game, but I'd play it better. "I'm keeping their name," I announced to the darkness. "When I build something, when I succeed, I'm keeping Chen." Martha's hand found mine. "Are you sure? You're a Stewart now." "Stewart Chen," I corrected. "I want them to see their name on everything I accomplish. Every article, every award, every building. I want them to choke on the irony that the daughter they threw away made their name worth more than they ever could." Jim chuckled, low and proud. "That's my girl. Show them what they missed." But even then, I knew it wasn't about showing them anything. It was about showing myself, proving that abandonment didn't define me, that I could take the name they'd poisoned with rejection and transform it into something powerful, something meaningful, something mine. I stopped needing their approval that night under the invisible stars. The email asking me to intern at the company they'd chosen over me wasn't an opportunity, it was an insult. And insults, I learned, make excellent fuel for the empire you build on your own terms. They wanted to pretend I was a stranger. Fine, strangers don't owe each other anything, especially not forgiveness. "Why foster care tech?" Professor Williams asked, reviewing my startup pitch in her Entrepreneurship 301 office. "Most Stanford kids are building the next Instagram or Uber. This is niche." I smiled, adjusting Martha's vintage blazer, the navy one she'd worn to my first parent-teacher conference as my guardian. $100 billion market, 40% inefficiency rate, 400,000 kids in the system. Seems like math worth doing. She leaned back, intrigued. "Personal connection? You could say that. That was sophomore year." While my classmates were getting drunk at frat parties and stressing over summer internships at Google, I was coding until 4 a.m. in my dorm room, building the bones of what would become Chen Industries. Not Chen Tech, Chen Industries. Because I wasn't just building a company, I was building an empire, one foster kid at a time. The first product was simple, an app that helped foster youth track their case files, educational records, and medical history. Things that got lost every time you moved homes. I called it Keep Safe, and I gave it away free. The foster care nonprofits loved it. The kids using it loved it more. "You're not charging anything?" my roommate Rebecca asked, watching me field my 20th thank you email of the day. "How is this a business?" "It's not," I said. "Yet." See, I understood something my biological parents never did. Sometimes the best investments are the ones that don't pay off immediately. Every foster kid using KeepSafe was data. Every caseworker recommending it was credibility. Every success story was proof that I understood a market nobody else was paying attention to. By junior year, I had 3 developers working with me, all former foster youth I'd met through the app's user base. We launched KeepSafe Pro for the agencies, with analytics dashboards and outcome tracking. Suddenly, we weren't a charity project. We were a B2B SaaS company with metrics that made venture capitalists drool. "We need to talk about your CEO title," Jason, my first investor, said over coffee. "L. Stewart Chen is mysterious, but mystery doesn't raise Series A." I stirred my latte, Jim's lucky cufflinks catching the light. He'd given them to me before my first pitch meeting. Just my initials, like H. Ross Perot or J. Paul Getty. "But investors want to meet you, put a face to the company." "They are meeting me. This is my face." What I didn't say, I'd legally changed my name to Lily Stewart Chen, but professionally, I was just L. Everything public, our website, our corporate filings, our press releases, used only the initial. Google L. Stewart Chen, and you'd find nothing before Chen Industries. No history, no past, no 11-year-old girl abandoned for a startup. The anonymity served me well. By the time I graduated, summa cum laude naturally, Chen Industries had raised $15 million in funding and employed 30 people. My biological parents' Chen Tech was still the bigger name, but we were catching up. Fast. The first time they tried to partner with us, I wasn't even in the room. Chen Tech wants a meeting, my COO, Marcus, announced during our Monday stand-up. They're interested in integrating our foster care data into their analytics platform. I kept my face neutral. What's our position on that? Could be huge, their name recognition plus our tech. Pass, I said simply. Incompatible corporate values. Marcus blinked. But they're Chen Tech. The Chen Tech. Don't you want to at least hear them out? I've heard enough. Next item? The second approach came through a mutual investor. The third through a Stanford connection. Each time, my board, who knew my history because transparency with your team matters, found polite ways to decline. Strategic differences, conflicting roadmaps, cultural misalignment. All true, they built their culture on abandoning inconveniences. I built mine on embracing the abandoned. While they burned through venture capital, chasing the next shiny trend, I stayed focused. Foster care tech became education tech, became social services infrastructure, unsexy markets with massive impact. By 27, we had contracts with 16 states. By 30, Chen Industries was the backbone of America's foster care data system. I stayed out of the spotlight deliberately. No Forbes interviews, though they kept asking. No TechCrunch profiles. No conference keynotes. When we won awards, Marcus or other executives accepted them. When Congress people wanted to discuss our impact on child welfare reform, I sent policy experts. You're building a unicorn in stealth mode. Rebecca, now my chief of staff, marveled one evening as we reviewed our latest numbers. $2 billion valuation, and nobody knows who you are. Good, I said, signing documents as L. Stewart Chen. Always just the initial. The work matters, I don't. But I was everywhere if you knew where to look. Every Chen Industries product update that made caseworkers' jobs easier. every algorithm that matched foster kids with better fit families, every scholarship funded by our foundation. Every time a foster youth aged out with their complete medical and educational records intact, ready to build their future, that was me, working in silence, building in shadows. My parents never connected the dots. How could they? L. Stuart Chen could be anyone. The shared surname was a coincidence, after all. Chen was common enough. And what were the odds their abandoned daughter was building a parallel empire under their nose? Chen Tech's struggling, Marcus mentioned one afternoon, scrolling through his phone. TechCrunch says they're looking for buyers, overextended on their latest product launch. I pulled up their financials on my screen. 3 pivots in 5 years, burning cash like kindling, chasing trends instead of solving problems. Classic Chen Tech, all flash, no foundation. Should we consider acquiring them? Marcus asked, half joking. The irony would be delicious. No, I said, closing the report. Let them find their own way. We have work to do. Because that's what separated us. They built Chen Tech for glory, for wealth, for the next magazine cover. I built Chen Industries for every kid eating Fruit Loops alone, while their parents discussed logistics. For every teenager getting a teddy bear instead of stability. For every foster youth who needed to know someone gave a damn about their future. The name Chen, which they'd made synonymous with abandonment in my life, now meant hope for thousands of kids in the system. Court documents bore the Chen Industries logo. Foster families used Chen Industries apps. Senators cited Chen Industries research when pushing for reform. I'd taken their poison and turned it into medicine, and they had no idea. You know they'll find out eventually, Martha said during one of our monthly dinners. She and Jim had retired to Napa Valley, funded partly by the stock options I'd insisted they take as founding advisors. Maybe, and I conceded, cutting into my stake, but not today. And when they do? I thought about it, twirling Martha's wedding ring. She'd given it to me when I turned 25, saying I'd need something borrowed when the time came. Then they'll know what they missed, but more importantly, thousands of foster kids will have what I didn't. A system that sees them as investments worth making. I built my empire on the foundation of their abandonment. Every line of code, every contract signed, every foster child whose life got a little easier because our technology gave a damn. That was my revenge. Not loud, not vindictive, just proof that the best companies, like the best families, are built on loyalty, not convenience. And loyalty, I learned, compounds better than any venture capital ever could. Madame, your champagne. I accepted the flute from the server, my hand steady despite what was about to unfold. The Foster Youth Foundation's 10th annual gala was my creation, my stage, though nobody knew it yet. Well, almost nobody. Rebecca stood beside me, radiant in emerald green, her tablet showing real-time donation numbers that had already crossed 8 figures. They're here, she murmured, nodding toward the entrance. And there they were, Victoria and Richard Chen, designer clothes that screamed old money even as their company bled new debt. They moved through the crowd like sharks in shallow water, desperate, hunting, trying not to show their desperation. My mother had traded her Hermes for Chanel, but the bag couldn't hide the tightness around her eyes. My father glad-handed everyone within reach, his business card practically glowing in his jacket pocket. Enjoying the show, Marcus appeared at my elbow, his tux impeccable as always. "It hasn't started yet," I said, watching them work the room. The Foster Youth Foundation Gala was the event in tech philanthropy. Everyone who mattered attended: venture capitalists, tech CEOs, senators, celebrities with causes. But more importantly, it was the one night where foster youth success stories took center stage. My night, though I'd always stayed in the shadows, content to let the foundation's public faces handle the spotlight. Tonight was different. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice rang out. Senator Patricia Williams, herself a former foster youth, commanded the stage. "Before we begin our program, I want to share something. 10 years ago, a young woman approached me with an idea. What if we could change the narrative?" she asked. "What if foster kids weren't just statistics, but success stories waiting to be written?" I sipped my champagne, watching my biological parents pause their networking to half listen. They were positioned near a table of venture capitalists, my mother touching her pearl necklace, her tell when anxious. That young woman built not just a foundation, but an empire of hope. Chen Industries has revolutionized foster care in America. Their technology has reunited families, prevented unnecessary separations, and ensured no child's history gets lost in the system. The senator paused for effect. "Tonight, we honor the woman behind it all, the mysterious L. Stuart Chen, who preferred building change to chasing fame." The lights dimmed. The screens around the ballroom flickered to life. "But first," Senator Williams continued, "let's hear her story, in her own words." My face appeared on screen, not current, but from 7 years ago, speaking at a foster youth council meeting. I'd forgotten they'd filmed that. My younger self looked directly at the camera, fierce and determined. "My name is Lily Stuart Chen. When I was 11, my biological parents left me at Sunshine Group Home to pursue their business dreams. They needed to focus on their vision, and I was incompatible with that vision. I heard the crash before I saw it. Champagne glass meeting marble floor, the sound sharp in the sudden silence. My mother stood frozen, her hand still shaped to hold the flute, amber liquid pooling at her Louboutins. The video continued, relentless. For 4 years, I believed I was worthless, that if my own parents could throw me away like a broken product, I must be defective. Then Martha and Jim Stewart showed me the truth. Family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. Photos flashed on screen. Me at various foster homes, case files, report cards sent to addresses that never responded. The return to sender letters I'd saved, evidence of trying to reach parents who'd already moved on. I kept their name, Chen, not out of love, but as a reminder. Every success I build with that name proves that abandoned children aren't waste products. We're investments that pay dividends when someone believes in us. My father had found my mother's hand, gripping it like a lifeline. His face cycled through recognition, shock, and something that might have been shame if I believed he was capable of it. The video shifted to recent footage, Chen Industries offices, our products in action, foster families using our apps, caseworkers praising our systems, children reunited with siblings because our algorithm found them across state lines. And through it all, my voice narrating the mission I'd built on their abandonment. Tonight, my video self concluded, Chen Industries pledges $50 million to expand our foster youth scholarship program. Because every child deserves what I finally found, parents who choose them every day, no matter what. The ballroom erupted, standing ovation. tears, checks being written on the spot. I stayed perfectly still, watching my parents navigate the social earthquake around them. People who'd been eager to network with them minutes ago now gave them wide berths, the connection too obvious to ignore. Please welcome Lily Stewart Chen. I hadn't planned to go on stage, that wasn't the agreement. But Rebecca nudged me forward, and sometimes the best moments aren't scripted. I walked through the crowd, feeling hundreds of eyes track my movement. The whispers started immediately. That's her. Can you believe? Their own daughter. I took the stage, accepting the humanitarian award from Senator Williams. The lights were bright, but I could still see them. My father had sunk into a chair. My mother stood paralyzed, tears destroying her careful makeup. Thank you, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. But this award doesn't belong to me. It belongs to every foster parent who sees potential where others see problems. To Martha and Jim Stewart, Mom, Dad, would you join me? They came up from table 12, Martha dabbing her eyes, Jim standing tall and proud. The audience applauded louder, recognizing real parents when they saw them. I hugged them both, feeling Martha whisper, "So proud of you, sweetheart." Foster care isn't about charity, I continued, one arm around each of my parents, my real parents. It's about recognizing that every child has value. Some people understand that instinctively, others. I let my gaze find Victoria and Richard Chen for just a moment. Others learn it too late. I didn't approach them after the speech, didn't seek them out during the reception. This wasn't about confrontation, it was about truth, served at exactly the right temperature. Cold enough to preserve clarity, not so frozen it couldn't be swallowed. Rebecca found me on the balcony an hour later, the city lights sparkling below. They left, she said simply, right after your speech. Your mother was not well. I know. I'd seen them flee, my father supporting my mother as she struggled to walk in her designer heels. Did they leave a donation? Actually, yes. Rebecca showed me her tablet. $1 million. The check was already written, but your father added another zero after your speech. I laughed, surprising myself. Guilt is expensive. What now? Rebecca asked. They know, everyone knows. The mystery of L. Stewart Chen is solved. I thought about it, twirling the humanitarian award. A crystal flame that caught the light like hope itself. Nothing changes. We have work to do, foster kids to help, systems to build. The only difference is now they know what they missed. And if they reach out? I looked back through the ballroom windows where Martha was dancing with Jim, both of them glowing with pride, where former foster youth were networking with CEOs, where the future was being funded one conversation at a time. Then they'll reach out, but I'm done reaching back. The truth doesn't need revenge. It just needs the right moment, the right audience, and the courage to stop hiding from people who hid you first. My parents came hunting for investors to save their company. Instead, they found their abandoned daughter had built everything they'd ever wanted and gave it all to the children they'd taught her she could be. They were waiting by Martha's Prius when I reached the parking garage. 3 hours after their grand exit from the gala, my biological parents stood under the fluorescent lights, like ghosts of the future they'd thrown away. My mother had aged a decade in those 3 hours. Mascara streaked her cheeks in black rivers. My father held her upright, his own facade cracking at the edges. "Lily!" My mother's voice broke on my name, the first time she'd said it to my face in 23 years. "Please, we need to talk." Rebecca moved to intercept them, but I touched her arm. "It's fine, get the car started, I'll be there in a minute." She hesitated, then nodded, understanding this was something I needed to face alone. The click of her heels faded, leaving us in the concrete cavern of everything unsaid. "That was quite a presentation," my father started, attempting his CEO voice. It came out hollow. "We had no idea you were—" "Stop." I held up a hand, Martha's wedding ring catching the harsh light. "Don't insult us both by pretending you knew. Maybe not the full picture, but you knew I was at Stanford. You sent that internship email, you knew enough." My mother swayed, and for a moment I thought she might collapse. "We made mistakes. Choices," I corrected. "You made choices. Calculated, strategic choices. I was a bad ROI, so you cut your losses." "That's not—" My father's protest died as I pulled out my phone, showing him his own words from the custody documents. "I digitized everything years ago. Evidence has a way of clarifying conversations." "Temporary reallocation of resources," I read. "Strategic pivot necessary for company growth. You wrote a business plan for abandoning your daughter, so let's keep this professional." They looked at each other, 23 years of marriage condensed into a glance of shared desperation. Finally, my father straightened his tie, still fighting for dignity in designer clothes he couldn't afford. "Chen Tech is facing bankruptcy," he said quietly. We've made some poor decisions, extended too far. The board wants to liquidate, but if we could secure bridge funding from your daughter's company." I kept my voice neutral, clinical, the way you'd discuss any failing acquisition target. "You have the resources," my mother whispered. $50 million just tonight for scholarships. Surely family. The word tasted bitter. Like Martha, who mortgaged her house for my college. Like Jim, who taught me to drive. In that Prius behind you, that kind of family? Silence stretched between us, filled with the echoes of other families loading into cars, laughing about the successful evening. Normal families who didn't have reunions in parking garages, reeking of desperation and diesel fumes. "What do you want from us?" my father asked finally. "An apology. We're sorry. We're so fucking sorry, Lily. We were young and stupid and thought success mattered more than your daughter," I finished for him. "I don't want your apology. Apologies are for mistakes. You made a business decision, so will I." I pulled out my phone again, this time opening my email. My lawyers had been thorough. They always were when it came to protecting what I'd built. The offer was already drafted, waiting for my signature. "Check your email," I told them, "both of you." They fumbled for their phones like drowning people, reaching for life preservers. I watched their faces as they read, seeing the moment comprehension dawned. My mother's hand flew to her throat. My father's jaw tightened. This is barely enough to cover our debts," he said. "It's fair market value for Chen Tech's intellectual property portfolio. My analysts were quite thorough. Your patents, your codebase, your client list, what's left of it. I'm offering to buy the only valuable pieces before your creditors pick the bones." "But we'll have nothing left," my mother breathed. "The house, our savings, everything is leveraged against the company." I shrugged, the gesture so casual it cut. "You'll have enough to start over. Rent a decent apartment, maybe in Arizona, lower cost of living. You can rebuild, refocus, pivot. All those business terms you love. This is revenge, my father accused, his mask finally slipping completely. You're enjoying this. No, and I meant it. Looking at them, broken, desperate, everything they'd never wanted to be, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just empty. This is business. You taught me that, remember? Emotions are liabilities. I'm offering you the same choice you gave me at 11. Adapt to circumstances or get left behind. My mother was crying again, but differently now. Quieter. Defeated. We're your parents, she whispered. Biologically? Yes, but you terminated that contract 23 years ago. No taxi-backsies in business, right? I clicked my key fob. The Prius chirped. You have 48 hours to accept the offer. After that, it expires, and you can deal with bankruptcy court instead. They're less generous than I am. I started walking toward the car. 3 steps, 4. Then my mother's voice, raw and desperate. Don't you feel anything? Aren't you angry? Don't you want to hurt us? I turned back one last time. They looked so small under the garage lights. 2 people who'd built their lives on the wrong foundation and were watching it crumble. I felt everything, I said quietly. Anger, hurt, abandonment, rage. I felt it all at 11, at 12, at 15. I felt it until Martha showed me that feeling it was letting you keep power over me. So no, I don't want to hurt you. I want to be free of you. This offer, it's not revenge, it's severance. A clean break. The kind you should have given me instead of 7 years of false hope. I got in the Prius, Martha's old car that had taken me to college visits, to my first job interview, to every milestone my biological parents missed. Rebecca had the heat running. Classical music played softly, Chopin, the piece I'd learned for the recital they'd never attended. You okay? She asked as I buckled in. Yeah. And surprisingly, I was. Let's go home. In the rearview mirror, I watched them standing in the fluorescent purgatory of the parking garage. My father had his arm around my mother. They looked exactly like what they were. People who'd gambled everything on the wrong priorities and lost. Rebecca drove in respectful silence until we reached the freeway. Then, think they'll take the offer? Of course they will. I leaned back, closing my eyes. They're survivors. They'll adapt, rebuild, probably start another company. Maybe this time they'll remember that success without family is just failure with money. Very zen of you. Martha's influence. I smiled, thinking of my real parents, probably already home in Napa, proud of their daughter, who'd learned to transform poison into medicine. She always said the best revenge is a life well lived. Turns out she was wrong. The best revenge is no revenge at all, just business. Grace isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to be better than the people who broke you. They wanted a business relationship. I gave them one, fair market value. No emotional premiums, no family discount. Just the clean, cold transaction they'd taught me to prefer. They'd get their fresh start, the same one they'd forced on me, just 23 years late and several $billion short. They took the deal, of course. 46 hours and 17 minutes after our parking garage encounter, the DocuSign notification popped up on my phone. Richard Chen and Victoria Chen's digital signatures, accepting the terms that would dissolve their empire and give them just enough to begin again. I signed my part while making breakfast, Martha's cast iron skillet sizzling with eggs the way she'd taught me. Low heat, patience, never rush perfection. It's done, I told Rebecca when she arrived at the office. Chen Tech's IP transfers next month. She studied me over her coffee. How do you feel? I considered the question, watching the city wake up through my office windows. Like someone who just finished a 23-year marathon they never meant to run. The integration was seamless. Chen Tech's best patents strengthened our foster care prediction algorithms. Their client relationships, what remained of them, opened doors in states we hadn't penetrated yet. Even their failures taught us something. What happens when ambition comes untethered from purpose? But the real epilogue began 6 months later. "There's a girl here to see you," my assistant announced one Tuesday afternoon. "Says she's aging out of foster care next week. Has some questions about our internship program." I looked up from reviewing expansion plans for our European offices. "Send her in." Sarah Chen, no relation, just cosmic irony striking again, walked in wearing a thrift store blazer that didn't quite fit and determination that absolutely did. 18 years old, dark circles under her eyes, clutching a folder that I knew contained every achievement she'd scraped together while bouncing between homes. "Ms. Stewart Chen," she began, then stopped, stared at the wall behind me where I'd finally hung a photo, not hidden anymore, just part of the story. Me at 11, the day before everything changed. "Is that?" "Me," I confirmed. "The day before my parents left me at Sunshine Group Home." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. "So it's true what they say? You were a foster kid, just like you." I gestured for her to sit. "Tell me about yourself, Sarah, but not the folder version, the real version." For the next hour she talked about the parents who'd chosen drugs over her, the foster homes that ranged from indifferent to actively harmful, the guidance counselor who'd told her to be realistic about her dreams, the full ride to community college she'd earned anyway. The bigger dreams she was afraid to voice because hope was dangerous when you'd been disappointed too often. "I want to build something," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something that helps kids like us, but I don't know how. I don't have connections or money or a family name that opens doors," I finished gently. Neither did I. Just a borrowed one from people who chose to love me when my blood relatives chose their business. I pulled out a business card, writing something on the back. "Our internship program starts in 3 weeks. This is my direct line. When you're ready, not if, when, call me. We'll figure out your something together." She took the card like it was made of gold. At the door, she turned back. "Ms. Stewart Chen, what happened to them? Your biological parents?" I thought about the last update I'd received. They'd moved to Scottsdale. Started a small consulting firm helping failed startups pivot. By all accounts, they were doing well enough. Humbled, perhaps, wiser, hopefully. "They're living their lives," I said simply. "And I'm living mine. That's the best ending anyone can hope for." After Sarah left, I stood at the window, watching the city pulse with afternoon energy. My phone buzzed. Martha, sending pictures from their garden. Jim's tomatoes were coming in beautifully. They'd be up next weekend for Sunday dinner, the tradition we'd kept for 19 years. Rebecca knocked, entering with a report. "The Singapore office wants to discuss the foster care pilot program." Also, Senator Williams called about testifying next month on the Family Preservation Act. Schedule them both. I turned from the window, catching my reflection in the glass. 34 years old, CEO of a company worth billions, daughter of Martha and Jim Stewart, former daughter of people who'd taught me inadvertently, that love should never be conditional. "Oh, and this came for you?" Rebecca handed me an envelope. Expensive stationery, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting inside a single sheet. My mother's careful script. "Lily, we've started volunteering at a group home here in Scottsdale, mentoring teenagers aging out. It doesn't undo anything, but maybe it prevents another child from feeling what you felt, what we caused. The director says we're naturals. I think she's wrong. We're just finally learning what you always knew, that children aren't investments, they're gifts, even when, especially when, they don't fit your business plan. Thank you for the lesson, however late we learned it." V. I read it twice, then filed it away. Not in the trash, not in a special place, just away. Another document in a story that had already been written. "You okay?" Rebecca asked, watching me with the protective concern of someone who'd been there since the beginning. "Perfect," I said, and meant it. "What's next on the schedule?" Because that's what you do when you've built your life on the ashes of abandonment. You keep building, not to prove anything to anyone, but because building is what you do. Every foster child we help finds stability. Every family we keep together. Every young person like Sarah who sees possibility instead of just statistics. That's the echo that matters. My biological parents gave me their name and then abandoned me to save their company. I took that name and built something they never could. A legacy measured not in revenue, but in lives changed. They chose their business over their daughter. I chose to make business out of choosing daughters and sons nobody else wanted. The Chen name, which once meant abandonment in my story, now means hope in thousands of others. Court documents bear it. Scholarship checks carry it. Foster children sign it on college applications. Knowing someone who's been where they are, believes in where they're going. That's not revenge. That's alchemy. Turning lead into gold, poison into medicine, abandonment into abundance. The sun set over the Bay Area, painting the sky in shades of possibility. Somewhere out there, Sarah Chen was probably staring at my business card, dreaming of the something she'd build. Somewhere else, my biological parents were learning to mentor children they couldn't profit from. And here, in the office built on principles they'd never understood, I was preparing for another day of work that mattered. Martha called as I was leaving. "Dinner Sunday, I'm making your favorite." "Wouldn't miss it, Mom." Because that's the final truth about refined revenge. It's not about them at all. It's about becoming who you were meant to be, with or without them. It's about choosing your family as carefully as they chose their priorities. It's about building something so beautiful that the ugly beginning becomes just another part of the story, not the most important part, not the defining part, just a part. They gave me a way to build an empire. I built a better one to give others a home. Dignity isn't revenge. It's the echo that remains when you choose to rise above the people who couldn't rise to meet you. And that echo, it sounds like hope, a note from refined revenge. If this story resonated with you, remember, the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with grace, dignity, and the quiet satisfaction of becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Have your own story of refined revenge? Share it in the comments below. Because sometimes the most powerful retaliation is simply living well and lifting others as you rise. Subscribe to Refined Revenge for more stories of elegant vindication, where success is the ultimate comeback and dignity always wins. Remember, you're not defined by who left you behind, but by who you choose to become. Make it magnificent. Hit the notification bell to never miss a story that proves living well isn't just the best revenge. It's the only revenge worth having.